So here we have Tim Jirus. Tim Jirus is a Navy commander at the DC Naval Yard, and the media misspelled his name as Juris, as I've put up here. Tim Jirus is one of the first witnesses to be interviewed and aired on the mainstream media directly after he left the building during and after the Navy Yard shooting, and his recount of the story is very specific in terms of what he was doing and that he saw the shooter shoot somebody right in front of him. So first, let's take a look at Tim Jirus in the official Navy news report.
DC officials say at least 12 people have died and several more were hurt in a shooting at the Washington Navy Yard. Pentagon officials confirm that Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel is receiving regular updates on this morning's rampage. A shooter got inside the Naval Sea Systems Command Headquarters building shortly after 8 a.m. Eastern. The investigation is now under FBI control. Navy Commander Tim Jirus described the chaos minutes after the shooting.
I was inside on the 4th floor when the shooting started. In fact, we heard some sounds that were kind of sounds like a muffled gunshot. We didn't know what it was. We had people running in the hallways telling everybody to evacuate. A couple of minutes later, the fire alarm inside the building went off, which is the way to get everybody outside the building. We picked up radios in our section. We're the safety folks, so we helped evacuate the building to get everybody out. Once we got people up down the backside and outside the back of the building, we evacuated them to one area which was closed off because we have gates for the base. We moved them the other way, and then I was outside there when another person got shot in the alleyway.
Navy officials.
Now, Tim Jirus is one of the first witnesses to report to the media and to recount his experience during the Navy Yard shooting. One recount of his story to the media is that he was talking to another man, a fellow military officer, who came running up to him proclaiming, "There's a shooter." And that as soon as he said the words, a Lexus came around and shot the man in the head. In other interviews, some in written articles and some directly on video to the media, Jirus says that he had already left the main building area and that he and another man were talking about there possibly being a shooter in the building, and that during the course of their conversation, the shooter came up and shot the man in the head. Jirus claims he then ran the opposite way and scaled a wall to get away from the shooter. In one interview, he recounts that the man he was talking to was a lot shorter than him, and this is why the man was shot and not him. There are a couple of things that are extremely suspicious about Tim Jirus' recount of events as a first-hand witness who claims he actually saw the shooter shoot someone right in front of him. First, I'm not sure how the other man being shorter than Jirus would have saved Jirus from being shot. If you think about it logically, the taller person in an instance like that would be the person that would more likely be shot in saving the shorter person. But next, Tim Jirus recounts talking to a military officer in several news interviews. However, as we know from the official statement, all of the victims were civilian contractors. A naval officer of 17 years would definitely know the difference between a civilian contractor and a military officer. And lastly, Jirus states that right in front of him, and he states this over and over in every single article and every single interview, that the man that he was talking to had gotten shot in the head. Now, if Tim Jirus was right next to this man when he was shot, why would Jirus not have any blood or brain matter splattered on his uniform? The Navy uniform he is wearing is a light tan color, and you would assume that any type of blood splatter would show up on such a light color of a uniform. There are countless other videos and interviews and photos of Jirus immediately after the shooting, and he would not have had the time to change his uniform beforehand. And most importantly, he claims that the victim was shot in the head. According to the information given to the media, none of the victims that died were shot directly in the head at close range, and none of the injured victims were shot directly at close range. So now we have these inconsistent stories if you look at all of the different interviews by Commander Tim Jirus. As I was doing an interview as I was doing research, I was looking for the commander on the post, and I found this guy, Monty Almer. What I found interesting was that the name had been changed from Commander David Varner, and from the looks of the records, it seems it had just been changed a weekend prior to the shooting. I'm not sure how this is relevant, but I did find it very odd that the actual commander was changed directly before the shooting.